Welcome to the Social World Podcast. I'm Dave Niven, and today I'm starting a series of podcasts that have been generated by the Triennial Congress at BASPCAN in Edinburgh University, which is the BASPCAN is British Association for the Study and Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. And it was a phenomenal affair, 4 days, 800 delegates, all on child protection. It was just like a kind of a huge festival of ideas and exchanges and networking and opportunity. Now, today I'm going to let you hear the culmination of the Congress, an interview with John Devaney, who chaired the Congress and who's the chair of BASPCAN. John's from Queen's University, Belfast. Now, he gives us a sense of what actually happened there and what his impressions were. But then I'd like to follow it up with a shorter interview I did with Sue Berelowitz, who's the Deputy Children's Commissioner for England. And she's going to be talking about the initiative that they did, or are doing, if you like, See Me, Hear Me, No Longer Invisible, which is out at the moment being piloted by 3 local authorities, and it's an excellent initiative to do with hearing children's voices. Now, future podcasts are going to feature Alan Baird, Chief Social Work Advisor to the Scottish Government, Sean Holland, Chief Social Services Officer and the Deputy Secretary Office at the Office of Social Services in Northern Ireland, Professor Harry Ferguson from Nottingham University, a good friend of this programme, and the kind of centrepiece, or one of the centrepieces, as it were, of the Congress was the debate that they were having on mandatory reporting. And for the motion that mandatory reporting should be turned into law in England and Wales, was Peter Garsden from Abney Garsden Solicitors. But Peter's been responsible for at least 25 class actions on behalf of survivors of sexual abuse over the years. And opposing that from the University of Denver in Colorado, Associate Professor Joe McClee, giving the American experience. But I'm going to add a little bit of extra flavour into that and actually talk about let you hear another one, a third podcast I did with Ben Matthews from the Australian Centre for Health Law Research at Queensland. And he's been looking at the last 10 years of data, if you like, to do with mandatory reporting, which has been kind of widespread in Australia, albeit in different guises. So that's a fascinating subject. And as soon as this general election's over, I really think we're going to find that that's one of the sort of top 10 or 15 items on the agenda is how we actually deal with child protection in this country and mandatory reporting or not. So that's coming up. And so I've got an absolute sort of feast of podcasts for you all over the next few weeks to listen to. And I'm also aware that a lot of the presentations from the BASPCAN Congress are going to be made available from their website. So buckle in, here we go. But first, tonight, John Devaney. Okay, hi. I'm joined now by John Devaney, and John is the chair of BASPCAN and has been the chair of this incredibly successful Congress that we've had here in Edinburgh University. Welcome, John.
Thanks very much, Stuart.
What to talk to you about is impressions, final thoughts, things you've learned, things you've been so pleased about here, things that you would have liked to have gone to see that you didn't. Anything, just the whole kind of let's do a wrap up of Congress here. How's it been? How's it impressed you?
I've really enjoyed myself, and I think that's been for a number of reasons. Firstly, we've had a terrific welcome by the people of Edinburgh and Scotland, who have really embraced Congress coming to their country and their city, and have been keen to sort of tell us about what's happening in Scotland at this moment in time in terms of improving the lives of children and trying to ensure that interventions are much earlier and the benefits are longer lasting. Alongside that, we've been overwhelmed by just the number of delegates that we've had, but in a very positive sense. We've had 600 delegates from the UK and another 200 who have travelled from outside the UK. And it's great not only to be able to share knowledge and understanding between the 5 countries that BASPCAN represents, between England, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland, because we don't do enough of that sharing, because I think we've got a natural experiment going on whereby we're very similar between the 5 countries with different statutes and law and with different approaches to how we try and tackle the same issues. But we're also extending that learning to looking at what's happening in other parts of the world and talking to people from Kenya, from Canada, from Australia, from Germany, from Norway, Sweden, allows us to think about, well, actually, there's lots that we do in this part of the world which is very good and that we can share, but there's also innovative and useful ways of thinking about how we might respond to the very complex issues that many children face by looking at what's happening elsewhere. So I think one of the things I've taken away from Congress is the importance of communities of practice, about people who are interested in similar issues, finding ways to continue to have a dialogue, and the dialogue that's begun here shouldn't be restricted to these 4 days. They should be continued beyond now to our next Congress in 3 years' time when we'll be meeting in England.
You want, obviously, BASPCAN to maintain its very proud record of kind of good practice, good knowledge, child abuse review, etc., you know, the things you publish and put on. I gathered you were thinking maybe at some point of moving this to a biennial event as well. Is that right, what I've heard about that?
It is, David, and we've planned to hold the next Congress in 3 years' time in 2018, and from that point we'll hold Congress every 2 years, so the one after that will be in 2020. And the reason we think that we need to hold the event more often is because our members have been telling us that. They say it's a long time between Congresses, and actually there's a lot of very exciting work being done by practitioners, by agencies, by researchers, and people are a bit anxious that it seems a long time to wait to be able to find out what is happening and working well in one place that might be transferable to somewhere else. So from 2018 we'll then move to a 2-yearly cycle, and I'm really excited about that because we've also committed to moving Congress around all of the countries that we represent, and it just means that I can come back to Northern Ireland just that wee bit sooner.
Okay. Obviously this has impressed a lot of people, the Congress, and what BASPCAN is capable of, and the kind of, if you like, the kind of show you can put on to do shorthand. I mean, obviously you would hope that people would want to join the association as well after this. I mean, what message would you like to give to those people who might have attended or read about Congress or whatever? I mean, because it seems to me it's a very valuable association to belong to if you're a practitioner, a researcher, an academic, whatever. I mean, what message would you like to give out to people who are thinking about it?
Being a member of BASPCAN actually doesn't cost very much. And by the time you claim back your tax, because it's sort of in your income tax return, you can sort of claim back the tax that you've paid. Actually, it works out at about £1 a week. And actually that £1 a week gives you access to a network of colleagues across disciplines who are passionate about the same issues that you are, but also gives you access to resources and information that would be much more expensive to access if you were trying to buy it off the shelf, whether it's receiving a copy of the journal Child Abuse Review as part of your membership 6 times a year, whether it's turning up at learning events or Congress and having a significant discount on attending, or whether it's becoming part of a local branch where you can meet with other colleagues in your area and outside of the constrictors of your own agency, be able to share learning, share knowledge, and talk about the issues which are presenting at a very local level. And we have some excellent thriving branches around the country where people really value that opportunity to get peer support two-way, that they're able to support others and others are able to support them. And actually there are no other organisations or forum for doing that. And actually there is something about us collectively having a voice, about standing up for children and standing up for families, but also standing up for professionals who are doing what is a very complex job in difficult circumstances and contrary to sometimes public perceptions, doing a very, very good job the vast majority of the time.
I know I've been talking to you before, and I know talking to your colleagues as well, that there is a perception, to be fair, that BASPCAN is mainly for more for established practitioners, established academics, established people, but that's not true, is it? You really are very, very keen, is my understanding, to get young blood, to get young, newly qualified, or people just starting out on the road in to actually enliven a lot of the BASPCAN kind of delivery, if you like. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a really important point to raise, David. Because we do see, in terms of new members every year, a significant proportion of those new members are people who are just entering the profession and are keen to learn and are keen to find avenues of support alongside the formal support within their agencies. I joined when I was a student back in the 1980s, so I've been a member of BASPCAN now for nearly 30 years. And actually there's been no point during those 30 years where I felt that I haven't got value for money out of it all. And therefore I would encourage any new practitioners, whatever discipline they're coming from, to actually give it a try, because actually they'll find that once they've signed up to become a member and seen some of the benefits of membership, that actually they feel that actually the cost of it is very little, but actually the benefits that they receive in terms of support, knowledge and understanding far exceeds that.
There's been such a range at the Congress here. This is sort of a final few points, but there's been a range of disciplines involved, a range of presentations. I mean, it's almost, to be quite fair, it's almost overwhelming in terms of choice, isn't it? I mean, and the idea of Congress as opposed to conference means that you've got to make all these multiple choices all the time about what you go and listen to and what you go and see. But thankfully, you managed to sort of have a good trick, if I might say, this year by putting people on twice, and so that people could get some of the keynotes and some of the main presentations. I mean, has that worked? Do you feel that's worked this year? What's the I think it has, because listening to the kind of the voices on the ground, but I wonder what your view was.
Yes, we were sort of needed to do it this way because with 800 people coming along, there's very few venues in a university that can hold all 800 people in the one go. And splitting the keynotes into a morning presentation and afternoon presentation means that the presentations have been typically given to between 300 and 400 people, which actually means that if you're a delegate, actually it's a much more personal experience rather than being in a room of 800 people. I think you're right that that has allowed people to not only hear the presentation, but to actually ask questions at the end that would be much more difficult to do if it was a much larger auditorium. Plus also it means that the keynote speakers, many of whom have stayed throughout Congress, have been around and about and have been very generous with their time in terms of talking to people individually about the issues that are relevant to practitioners. And here's an opportunity to speak to the Deputy Children's Commissioner, or the ACPO lead for child protection within the police, or the Chief Social Worker for Scotland. And I think that's, where else would practitioners find the opportunity to have that opportunity to talk about issues that are relevant for them to people who have very influential positions within the system?
I know from myself from chairing events, and I suspect it's the same for yourself today, you're often so concerned that things are going to go correctly that you're kind of, all over the place. You're looking to this, you're wanting that, you're checking this, you're checking that. Have you been able to enjoy it?
I've had an absolute ball. I don't think I've slept very much, and that's not just because of hard work, it's been because we've been so well looked after, and there's been a really good social programme around the conference, because if people are talking about what are very difficult and emotionally challenging issues during the day, you want people to feel as though they have an opportunity in the evening time to relax, to get to know each other, to network, and actually enjoy a bit of this fine city. And so we've been very fortunate that there's been great hospitality from the university, great hospitality from the city. And last night, if some people have sort of looked at the Twitter feed from Congress, they would have seen the tweets that were going out about the ceilidh that was held. I'm not a dancer. There were some people on the dance floor who weren't natural dancers, but they were certainly enjoying themselves, David.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So finally, message to all the listeners, because there'll be people out there who weren't able to come, who might just be discovering Congress from some of the podcasts we're putting out, or looking at some of the activity. Why should people be interested in joining BASPCAN now? You've said before the reasons for it, but I also think there's a camaraderie issue that possibly you might agree is important as well. It's so good sometimes to be among friends, wouldn't you agree?
That's right, David, and that's why we're a membership association. It's to support individuals and to make people feel that while they're doing complex, complicated, challenging and emotive jobs, that actually there are other people around who are there to support them and be very willing to support them. And I've gained an awful lot of knowledge and understanding through being a member of BASPCAN over nearly 30 years, but actually I've also made some very good friends who are dotted around these 5 countries, but that I can pick up the telephone to, that when sort of I bump into them at meetings or conferences, we can talk about things without it feeling as though I'll be judged because sort of I don't understand something or I'm worried about something. And I think that camaraderie, that sense of having good friends who are good colleagues and good colleagues who are good friends, has been one of probably the reason why I've stayed involved with BASPCAN for all this time.
Well, John Devaney, congratulations on a very, very good Congress, and thanks for talking to us.
And thank you, David, for all of your help and support as well.
Well, that was excellent. John, appreciated. Thank you very much indeed. Now, this next podcast, I said, is Sue Berelowitz, who's the Deputy Children's Commissioner for England. And Sue is outlining here the See Me, Hear Me, No Longer Invisible piece of research commissioned by the Office of the Children's Commissioner in England. So, without any further ado, Sue. Hello, well, I'm joined today by Sue Berelowitz, who's the Deputy Children's Commissioner for England. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
And she's going to just talk to us briefly about a recent new initiative, No Longer Invisible, See Me, Hear Me, and how that came about, what your objectives are with that, and what kind of outcomes you would like to see, if you'd just like to describe how that came about.
Thank you. It came about because of the national inquiry that the Office of the Children's Commissioner was running, in which I was chairing, into child sexual exploitation in the context of gangs and groups. And one of the things we were extremely concerned about was how the child protection services were failing children who are victims of sexual exploitation. So we developed a new conceptual framework for child protection, which I have to say I think applies across the whole of the child protection spectrum, not just in relation to sexual exploitation, although we're piloting it in the first instance in relation to children who are victims of sexual exploitation. It's entitled See Me, Hear Me because what was so apparent to us during the course of the inquiry was that the victims are largely invisible. These are children that society really neither wants to see nor hear. We're in a slightly better position now. The country has woken up to the issue of sexual exploitation. So some of those victims are being recognised now, but too many of them still are not. And there is no doubt that children who are black or from an ethnic minority, children who are disabled, children who are learning disabled as well as physically disabled, remain very, very hidden amongst those who are victims of child sexual exploitation. Hence calling it See Me, Hear Me. It's about making sure that the child is placed right in the heart of the child protection process. It's not something done to children, it's done something with children, and it's about the right service for the child at the right time and for as long as it takes. We developed it together with young people who were themselves victims of sexual exploitation. And it consists of 3 components: the voice of the child, the voice of the professional, and there's a 3rd component that relates to the agencies. The work with the voice of the child, as I said, was developed entirely with young people themselves who were victims. The component around the voice of the professional was developed together with professionals who are working in this field, and then we tested it out back with them, really. It consists of a series of questions that need to be answered, and none of them can be satisfied by a simple yes or no answer. So they are detailed questions which require detailed responses. So, for example, the young people said to us, that they need to be helped to understand that they are victims. So the first question is around, what makes you think I'm a victim? How do I know that I am a victim? So it needs somebody to sit down and engage with that young person, to talk them through, and it's not a one-off discussion, that is a process. How will I know that the plans you're making for me will keep me safe? So it's not just about saying to a child, this is what we're going to do. How do I know that what you're planning is going to keep me safe? You need to develop that in conjunction with me, the child. My residential care placement needs to involve me in all those plans. What support will you give me if this goes to court? Again, a detailed response is required to that. For the professionals, for example, we're trying to, in a sense, force managers into a situation in which they have to recognize the importance of supervision, training and support for their staff. This is very, very complex work, and people deserve all the support that they should be getting around this. So the professionals wanted us to ask questions around supervision and support. What is the supervision you're going to be providing for me? How will I know that when I have to make a difficult decision, you, my managers, are going to back me? How do I know that when I have to challenge somebody who's in a more senior position, and the example that often came up was, for example, a police officer having to challenge a pediatrician in terms of a diagnosis, how will I know that you are going to back me in that? So it is about people having to really give detailed answers, and it's not a one-off. These are processes that need to be returned to over and over and over again. Now, we're trialling this across 3 local authorities in England. The trial and evaluation are being run for us by Sussex University, being led by Barry Luckock at Sussex University. It's being trialled in Brighton and Hove, in Sandwell and in Oxfordshire. It's very much an active learning process about theory of change, and it is collaborative across the 3 local authorities, so we're all slightly different models, but each will be learning from each other, and we hope that the joint learning will add up to something quite big. And then we and Sussex will be getting the messages out as they arise. We're not going to wait right until the end to publish.
Timescale.
Yes, well, there is a 2-year timescale on this, but if the findings are telling in terms of improving practice, we want to get those messages out sooner rather than later. So we will be getting those messages out as they begin to arise. Of course, there will be a summative report at the end.
I chair a Safeguarding Children's Board,
right,
and I'm very involved with the actual chairs, the national chairs, right, and regional chairs. What sort of message would you give to the Safeguarding Children's Boards? Because obviously I can see their role being reasonably important in the implementation of this.
It's very important. The chairs need to be robust in asking questions and challenging. There's a lot of noise outside. What's going on in their local authority areas. They need to make, if people are not coming forward with data about the scale of child sexual abuse in general and sexual exploitation within their local areas, they need to be asking about that data and requiring it to be brought to them. They need to be ensuring that the problem profiling is done within their local areas to identify those children who are at high risk of becoming victims, because we've got 2 lists out there of the risk signs, that the signs children show when they're at risk and the signs children show when they're already victims. Just look at those and look for those children. Follow the children, you'll find the perpetrators. They need to be profiling the high-risk perpetrators or those at risk of being perpetrators in their areas, and mapping any children who are gang-involved or living in gang-involved neighbourhoods, because all those girls are at very high risk, and developing programs accordingly. So a really proactive stance from safeguarding boards. Pretty much all safeguarding boards now have policies around sexual exploitation. However, having a policy does not mean the policy is turned into action. So it's about ensuring that the action matches the policy and matches best practice.
Thanks. Just one thing there, you mentioned, I think quite reasonably, that there may well be quite a high resource implication to this in terms of training, certainly. Are you finding that you're hearing that there will be probably a buy-in to this, especially in times of austerity?
Well, there's some buy-in. I think there needs to be more buy-in, quite frankly. But, I do feel frustrated when I read serious case reviews that cost an awful lot of money to produce. Why wait for children to be seriously injured or indeed to die? And children have died from being sexually exploited. I was in one police area where they talked about children, 3 bodies unrecovered. Children who were abducted and sexually, they were raped. I mean, we talk about rape, and were then murdered. But, any type of child abuse is horrendous. Why wait for that to happen before spending the resources on finding out why? And then I'm afraid not always learning the lessons, as we know too often happens in relation to serious case reviews, and not applying them. Spend the money up front. Get it right for children now. It's better for children, it's better for society, and it's better for everybody's budgets, quite frankly.
So I'm guessing what you're saying is that the 3 authorities who are piloting the initiative at the moment, and you said you weren't going to wait, you were actually going to distribute the information as and when it happens, because I suspect all the other authorities, in order to implement any training or to actually plan for any training, budget for any training, will need to actually see what's being suggested first. So that...
Yes, and clearly training is an issue, but the training agencies, the universities, also need to be looking at what they're doing for their social workers at the point at which they're actually going for their initial social work training. Schools need to be making sure that when they have their inset days, they're really covering child protection effectively. Some police forces have been very proactive in terms of making sure that training is being done across all of their officers, and they are command and control, and they can make that happen, and many of them are doing that, and that is laudable, really. So if all agencies need to be doing that, it is cost effective to make sure your staff are well informed and well supported. I go back to the issue of it costs a lot of money to have things go wrong. It costs money to society, and it costs money to the local authority when they then start commissioning serious case reviews. Let's get it right first time.
In July this year, there's the Joint Social Work Education Conference happening, I think it's at the Open University this year, and you're going to get 200-300 of the social work academics from up and down the UK at that place. That sounds to me like an ideal place to remind them of the message that you're just putting out. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Wouldn't that be a good idea? And it's interesting that I have never been invited to speak on this topic to either that or the ADCS conference that's held in the summer of every year. I've been asked to speak about this at almost every other conceivable forum, really. Police, forensic physicians, mental health conferences, judges, lawyers, you name it, but not the leaders in children's social care, which is quite an interesting point.
I think that's a nice message to finish on.
I'd be very happy to do that anytime. These are important messages.
Well, I'm pleased to say that I'm going to be managing the media for that conference, and I'll pass on your message.
The offer is always there.
All right. Sue, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Well, there we are. A couple of excellent podcasts, and so much more to come from this Congress. Now, you can download these from iTunes, from Stitcher, from Podfeed. You can go to the website, www.socialworldpodcast.com. I mean, generally, my thanks as always to Alba Digital Media for the technical side of this podcast. Excellent, thank you, as always. And as I said, we'll be putting these out within the next few weeks, the list that I gave you. But please don't stop your comments coming. I really do value them. You've got the SpeakPipe facility on the website, where you can just quickly one click and record some comments about what you've heard, or some ideas for me to think about as to who you might like me to interview next or talk about next. Things, I mean, I can't see everything. I need your help, and I really appreciate the consistency of the listeners. It's really pleasing to hear how many of you are actually tuning into this, and those of you who are giving me ideas for the next phase. So, thank you for now. I hope you enjoyed it. See you very soon.